Prime Minister Allen Chastanet continues to vehemently dispute claims that the OECS Court of Appeal concluded that he was not a credible witness in the Tuxedo Villa's affair case. In January 2009, then opposition leader Dr. Kenny Anthony filed a case against the UWP government in the Tuxedo Villa's affair, seeking judicial review of the legality of Cabinet Conclusion number 574 of 2008. That cabinet motion granted then Health Minister Dr. Keith Mondesi duty-free concessions for the purchase of goods for his Tuxedo Villa's mini hotel, after he was already reportedly accorded duty-free concessions via Cabinet Conclusion number 543 in June 2007. The location of the villas at Rodney Bay and the minister's Bonterre residence were also in dispute. The court matter involved testimony from various key witnesses, including the then Tourism Minister, Allen Chastanet. In August 2009, the High Court ruled in favor of Dr. Kenny Anthony and awarded legal costs in the sum of $14,000. The UWP government would appeal, but the OECS Appellate Court in June 2010 upheld the High Court decision, quashed the cabinet conclusion, and awarded additional costs to be paid to Dr. Anthony. Now, Prime Minister Allen Chastanet, who phoned into Radio 100's show Out Goes In on Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020, has labelled charges that the appeal court referred to him as being less than honest a complete fabrication.
Well, first of all, this is around the Tuxedo Villa case, in which I was a witness and gave testimony during that case. And the initial judge, in his judgment, indicated that I was a very credible witness. The case was appealed, and in appealing the case, the appeal court decided to strike out that statement. Now, in striking out the statement that I was a credible witness is not going to the extreme and saying that I was not a credible witness. And so there is no document that in any way suggests that I lied or was deceitful. So this is just pure mischievous on the part of some of my detractors.
The controversy centers on then Tourism Minister Chastanet's testimony on a May-June 2008 meeting and his subsequent attendance at the June 26, 2008 cabinet meeting, at which the tourism concessions were further discussed. So what did the court judgment say? The trial judge in the 2009 High Court case, in evaluating Chastanet's testimony, stated, quote, "The minister was frank and open. He impressed the court as a reliable witness who gave his evidence in a credible and forthright manner. In cross-examination, the Minister of Tourism was candid." End quote. However, given inconsistencies, the appellate court in 2010 differed. Quote, "Mr. Chastanet deposed in his affidavit that he was not at the meeting because he was scheduled to travel out of the state on that date. He said in cross-examination that he was, quote, 1000%, unquote, sure he was off island. Yet the minutes of the meeting show on page 1 that he was present at the meeting, and on page 2 that 3 ministers are listed as being absent. Mr. Chastanet is not included in the list of absent ministers. The judge did not make a finding as to Mr. Chastanet's presence at the meeting. Had he done so and followed the course that he had charted regarding Dr. Mondesi, the inevitable conclusion would have been that the minutes show Mr. Chastanet being present and not absent. His evidence that he was not present at the meeting would have been rejected, as was the case with Dr. Mondesi. A rejection of Mr. Chastanet's evidence on this important point would have at least tarnished his image as a credible and reliable witness. The judge should have dealt with the issue of Mr. Chastanet's presence at the meeting. If he had done so, the inevitable conclusion would have been that his evidence was not credible or reliable." End quote. The judgment further stated, quote, "Taking all of these matters into consideration, the finding by the judge that Mr. Chastanet is a credible and reliable witness is set aside, and this court is in as good a position to evaluate Mr. Chastanet's evidence and draw its own inferences." End quote. Chastanet told the Out Goes In crew on Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020, that he makes a concerted attempt to tell the truth at all times. He argues that inaccurate statements should not be seen as a deliberate attempt at deception.
I try always to be truthful to people. Sometimes I can get facts wrong, like everybody else, yes, but I can say to you that it's never with any malicious intent, and I'm a person that if in fact I've made a mistake, at all times I am prepared to accept I've made a mistake and to correct whatever error I may have made or misinformation I may have been given out or being misquoted. But I certainly always try to speak the truth, and there are times in which we may have a difference of opinions, but difference of opinions doesn't constitute a person lying.
Over 10 years later, Chastanet claims that the landmark case led to changes in the logging of the minutes at cabinet meetings.
In those days, and out of the Tuxedo Villa, one of the changes that were made was that the cabinet minutes now reflect the time when ministers come in and ministers leave. So there was an issue in terms of I flew in from Washington, D.C. that day, and so I was not at the cabinet at the beginning of cabinet. I would not have arrived in cabinet until after 4:35 o'clock. So after initially showing me as not being there, and I was certainly not there during the decision of the Tuxedo this decision by cabinet, I did arrive later that afternoon. But I want to say that also, regardless of whether I was at the cabinet meeting or not, it was irrelevant because I had certainly spoken to Minister Guy Joseph and had given him the information to present at cabinet. So I was on board with the decision of cabinet at that particular time. But certainly to stretch out what the courts did to suggest that in any way that I was a liar or misrepresented the truth is really a stretch and not true at all.
Along with agreeing with the High Court that the then Cabinet acted unreasonably in granting tourism concessions to Dr. Keith Mondesi, the Appellate Court in 2010 also ruled the body acted in bad faith. The Court of Appeal said the evidence made it clear Cabinet was seeking to protect the then Health Minister when it granted the concessions. Colby DeVoe, HTS News Force.